Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me for an overview of our Executive in Residence program, which is a part of our nonprofit sabbatical program here at the Colorado Health Foundation. My name is Taryn Fort, and I have the great privilege of leading both the sabbatical program as well as our communications department here at the Colorado Health Foundation. So we get a lot of questions about our nonprofit executive sabbatical program, and particularly we get a lot of interest and curiosity around how the executive residency program particularly functions, how it works, what folks can expect. And really, we do think of the executive in residence as almost like a separate program, if you will, that is a part of the sabbatical program, but somewhat different than certainly what you see within more traditional types of sabbatical-like programs at other foundations and with other types of leadership entities across the country. So I wanted to share an overview with all of you. Hopefully you have around 20 minutes or so. I think that's all the time this will take. And certainly encourage you to reach out to me directly after you watch this if you have additional questions. So I am going to share my screen, and hopefully you will be able to see what I need you to see. I'm going to go into presentation mode, and let's talk about executive in residence. So before I dive into the detail on that, I just want to set this up in terms of the broader program. So our nonprofit executive sabbatical program is a newer offering that the Colorado Health Foundation has put into place as a part of our efforts to support the nonprofit sector generally from a capacity building support standpoint. And this program in particular is focused on two primary goals. First, we obviously want to recognize and reward long-term and respected executive directors from across the state of Colorado. But we also, through this opportunity, want to strengthen the organizations that they lead. So there are four primary sort of aspects to this program, or features, if you will. And before I talk through those, I will just mention that the grant itself for this particular program comes in the shape and size of up to $100,000. And also the activities that you're going to hear more about, you have the opportunity to take advantage of all of those pieces within an 18-month period once the grant is received. So the first, obviously, key feature of the program is the executive sabbatical itself. So we provide funding for executives to take time off, to rejuvenate, to enjoy their families, to travel. They might engage in professional development activities. They might do a mix of both. But really, the idea is that they step away from their everyday role as the executive director and actually spend time taking care of themselves, resting, just reigniting their excitement for the mission that they serve. There's also funding built into this grant for interim leadership support. So we obviously want to compensate and make sure that those folks who are stepping up as leaders or even as interim leaders of the organization while the executive director is on sabbatical. So we know that folks obviously need to run the organization while the CEO is away. And so we just want to make sure that there is funding support for those individuals or individual, whoever it may be. There's also funding built in this grant for staff capacity building support. And this is really where this opportunity around strengthening the organization overall comes into play, along with the interim leadership plan. Because if you have an existing set of internal leaders who might be ideal to step up in that interim phase, you're building your leadership bench. And we know that's important for any organization, as well as giving you the opportunity to engage with your staff around different types of capacity building that they feel like they need to continue their own work around the mission. And the fourth program feature is the executive residency itself. And so the sabbatical program is very much modeled on a number of other really successful programs out in the field. But the executive in residence is a really unique feature. I don't know of another program that offers this type of experience. It is meant to be very much a co-learning kind of experience between the grantee and our foundation. It is about a month in duration that we ask for folks to be spending time with us here at the Colorado Health Foundation. It's kind of a complete immersion into our culture. It's a complete immersion with our staff. And it usually occurs sometime either before or after the sabbatical has been taken. We actually have someone next year who's going to be doing 2 weeks of their residency before they go on sabbatical and 2 weeks on the back end. There are, I think, pros and cons to all different scenarios. Sometimes folks really love the idea of spending time in the residency with us at the Colorado Health Foundation before they take time away. And then others really want to do it on the back end after they've had that rejuvenation moment and just having a moment to spend time with us, to learn about philanthropy before going back into the office and taking back on and putting back on that CEO role, if you will. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of when the residency occurs. We even have folks who will take a sabbatical and then they'll go back to work for a few months because they need to, and then they'll come and do the residency with us here at the foundation. Again, the experience itself is very much co-designed for mutual benefit. I would say that a lot of the feedback that we've gotten to date from folks who've gone through this program feel like it's probably it skews a little bit more on the side of professional development for them in terms of learning about philanthropy. Because there are up to 65 of us, and there's one of you who may be in residency with us at any one time. It's natural that you probably are going to be taking more information from all of us than we might be taking in from you. But what I will say is, there are opportunities, and again, as we design the program itself together, we learn a lot about what you're interested in terms of what we do here at our foundation, and then we learn a lot from you about the different types of expertise that you have, things that you're passionate about within the nonprofit sector. It may be that you serve communities of color within the Denver metro area, and you want to share everything you can with our staff around what that has meant for you. You may have a very specific focus on types of racial justice work that you do, and we might want to learn about that from you. So you can expect to experience all different types of learning with us. A lot of that takes shape by being immersed with our staff directly. You would have lots of meetings. You might go to one-on-one meetings with a director here. You might come and sit down with me for an hour and learn about how we do strategic communications. You might find yourself in group meetings who are designing strategy around food access. You could find yourself at a Colorado Health Foundation board meeting. You will certainly experience an all-staff meeting. You would be invited to participate in our racial affinity groups that staff are participating in presently. Pretty much everything that our staff are experiencing is open to you as a resident to experience. So there's a lot of opportunity to learn. And then on our side, when it comes to us learning from you, each week of the residency that you're with us, you have an opportunity to host a staff learning session. It can be very informal. You get to pick the topics that you want to focus on. Often folks decide to sort of just have informal conversations. Sometimes they're curated conversations that I help you with, but it's really an opportunity for you to just talk kind of directly and formally with our staff about the experiences that you've had, the knowledge that you have to bring to bear. And that's where the co-learning experience comes into play. We do really ask that executive directors spend time with us as much as possible here in our Denver office. Now, we have recently transitioned to a hybrid work model. So most of us work in the office Monday through Wednesday, and then Thursdays and Fridays are typically remote. Obviously, there's all kinds of different asks and constraints and things that go into that model like any other workplace. But during the days of the week when the majority of staff are in the office, we'd really love for the executive directors to be here with us too. And so we recognize that that's a little bit easier if you live in Denver. and not all of our grantees do. So we also have built in a tremendous amount of flexibility around folks who especially live outside the metro area, folks who might have large families, small families, caregiving needs, anything that sort of would be a significant derailment to your day-to-day life is something that we will absolutely be considerate of. I think we've got folks who are coming from all corners of the state to be present with us, and so if it means that you need Mondays to drive in and you want to go home on Thursdays, we'll figure that out with you. And on those days that you are present here in Denver, we absolutely will take care of any lodging needs. We do really ask grantees to utilize some of the funds from the grant during your residency as much as possible to just take care of things like day-to-day food needs, gas expenses, but you can also be reimbursed for those. And that's really the only portion of this entire program that requires any type of reimbursement needs or any type of financial reporting. There's no other financial reporting as a part of this program. But if you find yourself, out on the road, which is a possibility with the program officer for a few days, you might have to fill up your gas tank. And so we would just ask that you track those expenses. They're usually they have been fairly minimal with folks who've been in residency with us to date. So the last couple of things I'll say is that this, again, this program is still very experimental for us. It's very startup. We've learned a lot in the past year through a number of residencies. We've made a lot of adjustments, like on the fly, as much as we can, to sort of listen to the executives who've experienced this with us. And there are kind of three pieces to this that I just want to emphasize. As we plan your experience with this, there's a huge amount of intentionality. You'll fill out a massive menu for me. There will be a lot of different types of meetings organized for you to participate in based on your interests. But there's also an organic aspect to this program. It's very emergent, that comes purely through the experience of being here. So, you might have a meeting with me on a Tuesday morning, and then you might run into another director. Maybe it's our HR director, maybe it's our director of policy at lunch, and you may get to chatting and decide that, ooh, I think I want to learn more from this person. I didn't have a meeting set up already, but I'm really interested in what they're doing. And so then from there, right, just that natural relationship gets developed, and there's space and time built into that residency for that. And a lot of reflection, particularly if you've been on sabbatical already and you're preparing to go back into the office. You may be thinking very differently about your CEO role as you go back. You may want to come in with a whole new agenda. So we also build in a lot of time for reflection and planning as well. And there's also executive coaching available during the residency as well. And then finally, I mentioned this already, but professional development is sometimes a good way to think about the residency, especially if you might be having a difficult time getting your head around what this is, or if you're trying to explain to your staff or board, like, what does it mean to be an executive in residence? A lot of our prior residents have really thought of this as a professional development opportunity. It's an opportunity to learn more about philanthropy, about how we operate as a foundation. So I just put that out there because I think it's helpful context sometimes for folks to think about it in that way. So we've learned a lot about the residency experience to date, and I'm just going to touch on a few of these just to give you a little flavor of the things that you might experience if you become a part of this program. So I've talked through some of these, so I'm not going to talk through every little rectangle that you see on the screen right now. We do have to do things like consider how relationships, for example, continue past the residency. We have folks who become very deeply ingrained with our culture in 4 weeks. And so then they're sort of like, well, do I still have to like check in at reception when I come to the Colorado Health Foundation for a meeting with the program officer? And you realize that like the relationship dynamics really shift and change after you're in residency. And so those are things that we'll talk about. The answer is that you probably can just cruise right by reception because you probably know where you're meeting. You probably know all the meeting rooms, you know the whole building. But that's a very different way of coming into the foundation if you don't have that relationship developed in that way. We really try to build lots of flexibility into the residency. I spend a lot of time with you understanding like what your learning style is. What are you nervous about? What are you excited about? What kinds of guidance can we give our staff as they engage with you? We've heard that coming into residency can feel like starting a new job or like the first day of school. So that's another consideration, just, you know, as you think about like what it feels like to come into residency here. And I will say that that flexibility is real. Like there's no one checking to be sure that you're here from 9 to 5 every day. You know, you have your schedule that you will adhere to. You'll have access to, you know, your own Colorado Health Foundation email address. We have the opportunity for you to utilize one of our laptops if you want. You will have your own office here in the building. And so while it probably feels very new to you, there's also a lot of flexibility for you to sort of drive your days. We also realize that, you know, there are just very natural power dynamics at play because of who we are coming into this organization. Whether you have a history with us or not can feel perhaps a little exciting. It might feel daunting. It might feel scary. It might feel like finally I get an audience, and we want all of those things. We want all of those things to just be recognized, and we try to talk really thoroughly with you all, and like both in before and throughout the residency itself, to just kind of talk about what's happening culturally to you. We also, you know, have really been figuring out as a staff how to engage with residents, especially if we don't have pre-existing relationships. Our staff are still figuring this out. We do really encourage lots of engagement from our staff with you, just like we would with anyone new at the foundation. We know sometimes, like depending on your personal work style, that like the organic and sort of emergent aspects of the residency might feel kind of overwhelming. If you're a little more introverted, you might not want to step outside of comfort zones. And so those are just things that we'll work with you on. The other thing is just, we've heard from a lot of folks that executives who've been a part of this are really interested in sort of having a voice around why this type of program is important, well beyond the residency, well beyond receiving the sabbatical. And that's something we're excited about, because we really do want to shift mindsets around like why rest and rejuvenation is important, and why quality time away is really important, not just for our mental and physical health, but also for the missions that we all serve. So again, you know, there's a lot of different types of staff engagement at CHF with residents. You can expect that folks would attend and engage in those learning sessions that you would host. You can expect drop-ins, you know, frequent folks just dropping by saying hello, maybe asking you to lunch, asking you to coffee. You may already have pre-existing meetings booked by the time you start on your first day, especially if you already know a program staff or someone from our policy team, for example. We definitely consider your areas of expertise, the things you're most passionate about, in terms of sharing that with us. And then we also just try to be very considerate of like different meeting topics and sort of protocol if you are in attendance. We try to make like space for introductions for you to be able to share things that you might, you know, want to say in a bigger group meeting setting. We try to make space for questions. We try to remind our staff to not talk in acronyms, because we have a tendency to do that here. Explain kind of the, you know, what is behind what you're discussing, and just make that extra space for just knowledge and passing of knowledge, if you will. So you're not sitting there confused all the time. So that is it for my actual presentation. I am going to, I think I've answered a lot of questions that come up for folks as they think about coming into residency, what they're most interested in through this presentation, but certainly encourage you, if you have not heard the answer to your question that you have today, visit our website at coloradohealth.org. We do have an FAQ about the residency program along with the overall program itself. I always encourage folks to just reach out to me directly if you just need to know more about something, if you're just curious about something. And a lot of our grantees who've been through the program have been very generous with their time around sharing what their experience has been. I will say, I think each experience is individual. And so while there's some thematic considerations that come up for everyone, I think it's also true that everyone has a different experience when they're with us, and there are always different circumstances at play, given the timing of when you might be in residency. So that is the conclusion of my conversation with all of you today. Thank you for watching this. Again, encourage you to read our website, coloradohelp.org, search for the nonprofit sabbatical program. You should find all of that information there along with my contact information. You can also just email me directly at tfort@coloradohelp.org. Thank you so much for watching.